Imagine yourself on a regular day, filled with expectations and hopes. Suddenly, everything collapses when you discover that the person you trusted the most has betrayed not only your trust but also the security of your home. A pregnant wife, locked in a sauna while her husband flees with his lover to São Paulo. 10 days later, a man, Bianca and Vitor, got married 3 months ago after dating for 4 years. Everything seemed perfect. Bianca, 25 years old, was very happy. She was studying journalism at a great university in Porto Alegre, where she lived with Vitor. But when she found out she was pregnant, he asked her to drop out of college. Vitor, 28, is a civil engineer. His family owns a large construction company, and he started working there as soon as he graduated, despite having little experience. Since meeting Bianca, Vitor had talked about marriage and wanted her to dedicate herself solely to the family. When they discovered the pregnancy, he thought he had a good reason to ask her to leave the course. Bianca found it difficult, but the first months of pregnancy were complicated, so she agreed. They decided to marry quickly after discovering the baby was on the way. Sonia, Vitor's mother, helped organize the wedding, even though she didn't like Bianca much. The wedding was news on social media and gossip columns, which made Bianca uncomfortable, but she accepted it to stay by Vitor's side. On the wedding day, Vitor drank too much and ended up embarrassing Bianca and their parents, but she stayed happy to have married, wearing a beautiful white dress and having a 5-tier cake. But their relationship had its ups and downs. Vitor was stubborn and jealous, which led to many fights. He promised to change, but Bianca suspected he was cheating on her, although she could never prove it. Bianca had known since she was young that infidelity was common in Vitor's family. Then, something terrible happened. Vitor locked Bianca, who was 5 months pregnant, in a sauna and fled to São Paulo with his lover. 10 days later, a man appeared. Bianca was desperate and exhausted. Fortunately, this man found her in time. He helped her out of the sauna and called an ambulance. Bianca was taken to the hospital, where she received treatment. She was very weak, but both she and the baby were safe. This man, named João, was a true hero. He explained that he was walking near Bianca's house when he heard strange noises coming from the sauna. He decided to investigate and found Bianca locked inside. While Bianca was recovering in the hospital, the police began searching for Vitor. He and his lover didn't get far, and they were soon found in a hotel in São Paulo. Vitor was arrested and taken back to Porto Alegre. In the hospital, Bianca received many supportive visits, including from her family and friends. Even Vitor's mother, Sonia, came to see her. She was horrified by what her son had done and apologized to Bianca. Over time, Bianca made a full recovery. She decided to return to studying journalism and pursue her dreams. With the help of friends and family, she began to build a new life for herself and her baby. This difficult experience made Bianca realize her own strength and courage. She learned that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope and people willing to help. And so, Bianca moved forward, stronger and more determined than ever. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Bianca who was very happy with her fiancé, Vitor. Her father, Arnaldo, had his moments of failings, but her mother always ended up forgiving him, and things would return to normal. However, Bianca had one rule. She could accept any flaw in a man except infidelity. So, she trusted that Vitor was hers alone and overlooked his minor flaws. One day, Bianca discovered she was pregnant. Super excited, she asked her best friend, Roberta, who had just started working as a secretary at Vitor's company, for help. For Bianca, this was perfect. After all, her best friend would be working directly with Vitor and could report any suspicious behavior. Roberta promised to keep an eye on Vitor and, after a while, said he was behaving very well, just working hard. Bianca felt relieved and relaxed, confident that Vitor was faithful. They got married, and after the party, Vitor apologized for anything and promised to do his best for Bianca and the baby. The first 2 months were calm, and Roberta continued to provide Bianca with complete reports, assuring her that Vitor was solely focused on work. However, in the 3rd month of marriage and the 5th month of pregnancy, Bianca noticed that Vitor had changed. He was impatient and seemed uninterested in the pregnancy. At first, he talked all the time about the baby, but now he barely looked at Bianca. Afraid of being cheated on, Bianca frequently called Roberta, who reassured her that Vitor was just stressed with work. The construction company where Vitor worked was involved in a major luxury project in the Bella Vista neighborhood, one of the most upscale in Porto Alegre. The project was advancing, but there were still important details missing, and there was a lot of pressure to deliver everything on time. Bianca tried to calm herself with these explanations, but couldn't help worrying about her husband. Would he manage everything? Roberta continued to reassure her, saying that the construction company would soon deliver the first units, and the pressure would decrease. She suggested that Bianca focus on preparing the baby's room and give Vitor more space to breathe. Every day, Bianca tried to follow her friend's advice. She started decorating the baby's room with great care, choosing each detail carefully. Vitor, in turn, continued to work intensely, but always tried to find a moment to ask about the baby. Bianca knew he was stressed, but still felt a bit insecure. One day, Roberta came to visit Bianca and brought good news. The construction company had finally delivered the first units of the project. The pressure on Vitor had eased, and he started to return to his old self, more attentive and affectionate. Bianca breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that everything was returning to normal. Months passed, and with Roberta's help, Bianca managed to stay calm and trust Vitor. Finally, the big day arrived. The baby was born. Vitor was by Bianca's side, holding her hand and promising to be the best father in the world. Bianca, looking at her baby's face, knew that it was all worth it. She had her family and her best friend by her side, and that was all she needed to be happy. When Vitor told Bianca that he would need to make a short trip to Rio de Janeiro over the weekend for work matters, she didn't find it strange. But, as the trip approached, he mentioned that he would be taking Roberta, the secretary, to help with the documents and to put Bianca's mind at ease. Bianca was pleased with the news, as she trusted her friend and knew that Vitor wouldn't betray her. The weekend started off calmly until Marta, Bianca's mother, spoke to her. Marta found it odd that Vitor would travel alone with Roberta to Rio de Janeiro. What kind of bureaucracy would he be handling on a Saturday and Sunday? Bianca was upset with her mother for thinking poorly of Roberta. After all, the friend had agreed to work on the weekend to help. Marta, a woman who had suffered many betrayals, believed Bianca was trusting the wrong person. To her, Roberta's behavior seemed suspicious. Bianca decided to stay calm and not let her mother's doubts disturb her peace. Being 5 months pregnant, she knew she didn't need that kind of stress. These thoughts left Bianca's mind until Sunday dinner, when she saw a photo on Roberta's social media of her at the beach. She wondered why her friend was at the beach in the middle of a work weekend. Bianca tried to calm herself and thought that Roberta deserved some leisure time, given her humble background and limited travel opportunities. The work trip was a chance for Roberta to see one of the most beautiful cities in Brazil. Bianca was proud of Vitor for allowing the secretary to enjoy the beach while he worked. With a smile, she prepared to go to bed. But before lying down, she saw a photo on social media of Vitor at the beach, taken from the same angle as Roberta's. Now, Bianca was confused. Why was her husband at the beach too? She tried not to think the worst right away. After all, Vitor might have finished his work and decided to relax on the beach. But the coincidence of the photos left her feeling uneasy. On Monday, Bianca tried not to let her worries take over her day. She knew she needed to stay calm for the sake of the baby, but the doubt continued to nag at her. She decided she needed to talk to Vitor as soon as he got back. She didn't want to argue, just understand the situation. When Vitor arrived home, Bianca greeted him with a hug and a smile, but she couldn't shake the photos from her mind. After dinner, she sat down with Vitor and calmly asked about the trip. He talked about the meetings and documents, but Bianca wanted to know about the beach. Vitor explained that after taking care of everything, he decided to relax a bit and enjoyed the company of Roberta, who had never been to Rio before. Bianca tried to understand, but the doubt lingered. Was he being completely honest? In the following days, Bianca watched Vitor and Roberta more closely, looking for any sign that something was wrong. At the same time, she tried to remember all the times Vitor had shown himself to be a loving and devoted husband. She didn't want to be like her mother, always suspicious and unhappy. The situation weighed heavily on Bianca's heart. She loved Vitor and wanted to believe in him, but the shadow of doubt was always present. She decided that the best thing to do was have a frank conversation with Roberta. She called her friend and invited her for a coffee. At the meeting, Bianca tried to be casual, but she couldn't hide her concern. She asked about the trip and the beach, and Roberta enthusiastically described how wonderful it was to see the sea for the first time. Bianca felt relief seeing the sincerity in her friend's eyes, but still, something didn't seem right. Back home, Bianca reflected on the conversation. She needed to trust her instincts and, at the same time, not let paranoia take over. She decided to give Vitor and Roberta the benefit of the doubt, but made it clear to herself that she would stay alert for any signs of betrayal. As time went by, Bianca and Vitor returned to their routine. He continued to be a caring husband, and Roberta, a loyal friend. Bianca learned to balance trust with prudence, always remembering that, at its core, true love is built on trust and communication. Bianca's heart raced with fear at the thought that she might be deceived by the two people she trusted most, her husband Vitor and her best friend, Roberta. Just thinking about it made her break out in a cold sweat. But then she thought a little more and concluded that if they were indeed having an affair, they wouldn't post pictures from the same place. They would be hiding it. Surely, they would have a good explanation. When Vitor returned from the trip, Bianca asked how it went and if he managed to resolve the work issues. He responded evasively, saying that the trip was very productive and that he made many important decisions. Bianca asked if this was related to the ongoing project, but Vitor just replied that it wasn't, claiming to be very tired. He said he would take a shower and rest since he would only go to the construction site in the afternoon, as he had a prenatal Pilates class. Still suspicious, Bianca called Roberta while she was out to find out how the trip had been. The friend was less evasive than her husband, but there was something strange in her voice. Roberta said that they visited some important clients of the construction company and that Vitor negotiated the terms of some contracts. At the end of Sunday, after resolving the main issues, they took 10 minutes to go to Copacabana Beach. According to Roberta, she told Vitor that she had never left Rio Grande do Sul, and he suggested they stop by the beach for a bit. Roberta seemed very happy to have seen a new and beautiful place. Bianca felt bad for having doubted her friend and her husband, even if only for a brief moment. However, she still found Vitor's behavior strange. So, she asked Roberta if Vitor had gone somewhere by himself. The friend replied no, that Vitor had been focused on work issues the entire time. Bianca breathed a sigh of relief. Even so, Vitor continued to distance himself from Bianca, and they had been married for only 3 months. Even Sonia, Vitor's mother, who did not like Bianca, began to find it strange and questioned her son about it. Sonia said that, although she disapproved of Bianca, now that Vitor was married and about to become a father, he should stick with the relationship. After all, what would high society think of such a sudden divorce? In response to these questions, Vitor told his mother that he was not thinking about separating from Bianca, at least not until the baby was born. After that, he couldn't guarantee anything. Sonia, not being naive, understood that there was someone else in the picture, but she couldn't imagine who. Her son had always been unpredictable. One moment he was in love with someone, and the next moment he was in another story. Even so, Sonia really believed Vitor's words, although with some doubts. Sonia knew that her son's relationship with Bianca was different. Even though he had cheated on Bianca a few times, it was obvious that he liked her. Moreover, he did not end the relationship, which made Sonia suspect that he had switched Bianca's birth control pills to make her pregnant. This was a serious accusation, but it made sense. Sometime before, he had asked his mother several questions about birth control and how long it took for a woman to get pregnant. At the time, Sonia thought he wanted to avoid an unwanted pregnancy, but when Bianca announced she was pregnant and didn't understand how it had happened, Sonia realized her son was involved. Sonia decided not to tell Bianca anything, fearing she might lose her grandchild. Even though she didn't like Bianca, Sonia really wanted a grandchild. She almost got angry with her son for cheating on Bianca, but this irritation wasn't very strong because she never liked her daughter-in-law much. Sonia was a practical woman and began to think about the worst-case scenario if her son separated from Bianca. Since they were middle class, the worst thing would be a legal battle for custody of the baby. Sonia thought it wouldn't be hard to get custody of the grandchild, as her family was important and had the right contacts. Even if Bianca got custody, Sonia would do everything to be present and shape her grandchild as she saw fit. In all scenarios, Sonia imagined that her family would win and Bianca would lose. Unaware of what was happening, Bianca decided she would save her marriage. 5 months pregnant, she felt she needed to get closer to her husband. Her friend Roberta advised keeping a distance to avoid irritating Vitor, but Bianca felt she needed to be near him. Determined to win Vitor back, Bianca went to the beauty salon. She got ready and decided to visit her husband at the new construction site where he worked. Bianca learned from one of the employees that there would be an inspection until 3 p.m. that day, and then Vitor would be alone to sign some documents. Bianca decided not to tell Roberta about her visit, as she didn't want her friend to spoil the surprise, even unintentionally. Deep down, she knew Roberta wanted the best for her, but Bianca wasn't ready to hear any reprimands or discouragement. Wearing a dress that disguised her pregnant belly, made up and with her hair done, Bianca went to the construction site. The closer the taxi got to the company, the more excited she became about the possibility of saving her marriage. Bianca was sure that Vitor was just going through a tough time at work and that it had nothing to do with her or the baby. She believed he would never abandon her for another woman, and if there were someone else, Roberta would have told her. When she got out of the taxi, Bianca encountered Jorge, one of the architects at the construction company. She already knew him from previous visits and felt a bit more confident seeing a familiar face. Bianca, a 30-year-old woman, always found it amusing when she thought about how handsome Jorge was, even at serious company events. Whenever she was next to Vitor and Jorge, she always laughed internally. Jorge, on the other hand, had always been very polite to her, despite them never having had anything beyond friendly conversations. One day, Jorge greeted Bianca and said he was leaving since his work on the project was finished. However, he was sure that Vitor was still in the building because there were some documents that needed to be signed. Bianca, with a smile, replied that she was there to surprise her husband, the architect. Jorge said goodbye and headed to the parking lot. Bianca entered the nearly completed building. Only a few details were missing, but overall, it was already very beautiful. She imagined future residents enjoying leisure and relaxation in that place. Following Jorge's directions, she walked toward the party room, which Vitor was using as an office, according to the employee. As Bianca approached the party room, she began to hear laughter coming from the nearby sauna. Her heart raced when she recognized one of the laughs as Vitor's, the laugh he gave when he was with her but hadn't heard in a while. Now, it seemed he was laughing with someone else. Was there someone with him in the sauna? Was this really happening? The closer Bianca got, the more nervous she became. Besides Vitor's laughter, she heard a female laugh that sounded very familiar. It couldn't be. This must be a nightmare. But with every step she took, Bianca was convinced it was a harsh reality. When she reached the sauna door, Bianca knew she needed to be strong and open it. Whatever was beyond it, she had to see, even if it hurt her deeply. Determined, she reached for the door handle and opened it slowly, trying not to make a sound. Through the crack of the door, she saw Vitor's silhouette intertwined with another person. Someone she knew very well, Roberta. The two were laughing and kissing passionately in the luxurious sauna of the construction company's project. Bianca couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her best friend was kissing her husband while she was almost 6 months pregnant. Her legs went weak, and she nearly fell to the ground. In desperation, her body leaned on the door handle, which opened completely with a crash. Roberta and Vitor immediately looked towards the door. Bianca was there, looking at them with a shattered heart. The scene was worse than any nightmare she could have imagined. She felt a deep pain, as if she had been punched in the stomach. Bianca would never forget that moment, the betrayal of her husband and her best friend. Now, she needed to decide what to do. All she wanted was to run away, but her legs wouldn't respond. Bianca felt trapped in that terrible reality, not knowing how to escape. Bianca was very frightened to see the tearful eyes of both. They all stood in silence for about 30 seconds until Bianca gathered the courage to enter the sauna. With firm steps, she approached the two and began to speak loudly, but without shouting. "I can't believe you had the courage to do something so horrible to me," she exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. Vitor tried to calm Bianca. "Please, Bianca, calm down. I wanted to tell you in a different way." He began to explain. He then confessed that he and Roberta had fallen in love since she started working with him. At first, they tried to avoid it, but the love between them was too strong. Vitor continued, saying that he had been trying for weeks to find the right moment to tell Bianca that he was going to separate from her to be with Roberta. But he assured Bianca not to worry, as he would take care of the baby, and Roberta would be willing to raise the child as if it were her own. Bianca couldn't believe what she was hearing. It felt like a nightmare. But as she realized that everything was real, she walked closer to the two traitors. With tears of anger and pain, she told them she would never forgive them for such a lack of consideration and respect. To Vitor, she declared that if she could avoid it, he would not come near her child. And to Roberta, she hurled harsh words, asking how her longtime friend could betray her in such a way. Bianca was devastated, unsure who had hurt her more, her husband or her best friend. Feeling betrayed and groundless, she was deeply shaken. Finally, Roberta spoke, but her words were cold and harsh. She said that the fault for everything lay with Bianca. "Your obsession with not being betrayed led Vitor to fall in love with me," Roberta said. "I'm not to blame if you became a boring and lifeless woman." Vitor had no choice but to look for someone else. How could he remain interested in someone like you, who lacks personality and now has a body deformed by pregnancy? As she listened to these cruel words, Bianca wondered how she hadn't realized sooner that she was with someone as malicious as Roberta. She realized that Roberta had always had that malice inside her, and now everything was clear. Bianca felt the weight of betrayal and the pain of being deceived by those she trusted most. From the beginning, Roberta seemed to have plotted everything to steal Vitor's money. Now it all made sense. What she always wanted was money, and Vitor could offer exactly that. Bianca then looked at Roberta and Vitor and said that the only thing Roberta wanted was his money. Vitor, thinking Bianca was just nervous, suggested they continue the conversation later. But Bianca insisted they needed to resolve it right then. Taking advantage of Bianca's nervousness, Roberta signaled to Vitor, indicating the sauna door. He understood immediately. They should leave and lock Bianca in the sauna. So, discreetly, the two moved toward the door. Bianca was crying heavily and didn't notice when they got close. Thus, Roberta and Vitor left, and Roberta shouted to Vitor to use one of the loose floorboards to block the sauna door. Meanwhile, she said she would turn off the sauna so Bianca would be fine inside. Vitor agreed, and while securing the board, he saw Roberta go to the sauna control system, which was located outside. Once they were finished, they ran away. Bianca screamed inside the sauna, trying in vain to open the blocked door. As the minutes passed, she felt the temperature rise significantly and began to feel ill. Despair took over her as the building was empty and no one would find her there. How long could she endure the maximum temperature? It was useless trying to open the door. The pain of betrayal was replaced by physical pain. The two people she trusted most had locked her in there, with no hope of getting out anytime soon. Perhaps she and the baby wouldn't survive. 5 long minutes passed, and Bianca was on the floor, nearly unconscious, when she heard a noise at the door. Someone had removed the board holding the door from the outside. Suddenly, she felt someone pick her up from the floor and take her out of the unbearable steam. Bianca wanted to know who her savior was, who smelled of woody perfume, but she couldn't see as she fainted. Her body seemed to shut down upon realizing she was safe. Many hours later, Bianca woke up in the hospital, under the watchful eyes of her parents, Marta and Arnaldo. They looked distraught. For a moment, Bianca feared the worst and placed a hand on her belly. Her mother reassured her, stating that the baby was fine and the pregnancy continued. Bianca was in a hospital, worried, when the doctors said they needed to run some tests to ensure that her baby had no lasting effects. With tears streaming down her face, Bianca asked her mother, Marta, if she knew what had happened. Marta explained that she only knew that Vitor, the baby's father, had run away with his secretary. Crying a lot, Bianca apologized to her mother for not listening to her advice. Marta replied that she would rather be wrong because it was very hard to see her daughter going through that situation. However, Marta reminded her daughter that there was a positive side. The failed marriage ended before Bianca got trapped in a situation she couldn't escape from. With her hands on her stomach, Bianca looked at Marta and Arnaldo, her parents. They understood their daughter's fear and assured her that they would help raise the baby without her having to rely on Vitor. At that moment, Sonia, Vitor's mother, entered the room and loudly declared that the child would be raised by Vitor. She thought it was outrageous that her grandson would suffer because his mother was proud and resentful for being replaced by a secretary. Sonia said that all men, at some point, have affairs with employees and then return to their wives. Bianca became very nervous with the sudden arrival of her mother-in-law and asked her to leave and go away, as this was not the time for a discussion. Sonia insisted that there was no discussion because she and her family would never give up the child. Marta, already furious with Sonia's attitude, kicked her out of Bianca's room. As they left the room, Arnaldo told his daughter that he had betrayed Marta throughout his life and recognized it was a big mistake. He understood the pain of seeing his daughter in the same situation and said that, unfortunately, he couldn't do anything but advise her. Arnaldo advised Bianca not to take Vitor back, even if he begged, because he knew that things wouldn't change. Bianca looked into her father's eyes and, for the first time in a long time, told him she loved him. She still suffered a lot for everything he had put Marta through, but she felt more at ease knowing that at least he regretted it. As for Vitor, Bianca would never forgive him. Besides betraying her, he chose to do it with her best friend. There was nothing more terrible than a double betrayal. She lost, on the same day, two people she loved deeply. To make matters worse, both had tried to take her life. At that moment, Bianca realized she didn't know who had saved her. When she was about to ask her father, Marta came into the room, very red and nervous. Bianca's mother explained that she had kicked Sonia out and that the snobbish and unbearable woman would think twice before bothering her daughter again. Bianca felt relieved to be surrounded by her parents' love. She knew she would face great difficulties and needed that security. The doctor in charge of Bianca came into the room and said that, as far as could be told, the little girl she was expecting was fine and would have no sequelae. Bianca was emotional to learn that the baby was a girl, as every time she had an ultrasound, the baby had stubbornly hidden. She was grateful for her parents' support and felt a huge relief knowing her daughter was okay, despite all the adversity she had faced. Bianca had always wanted to be the mother of a girl, and when the doctor brought the news, it was a relief for her amidst so much suffering. Her story was already known throughout the hospital. She had caught her husband with her best friend and almost died trapped in a sauna. When the doctor left and Bianca's father went to get a coffee, she asked her mother, Marta, what had happened to Vitor and Roberta. Marta, knowing it was better to be direct, said that they had fled to São Paulo. The construction company where Vitor worked had issued 2 last-minute tickets for them, and the plan was probably to catch an international flight. Bianca needed to know that Vitor and Roberta had tried to kill her, and that the police were after them to clear everything up. Bianca, while she was in the sauna, hadn't realized that they really wanted to end her life. It was very serious. Upon hearing the truth, Bianca became even more saddened. She realized that those two had never truly loved her, because those who love don't do something so extreme. This realization distracted her, and she ended up forgetting to ask about her savior. Days passed, and Bianca needed to stay in the hospital for 10 days for observation, so the doctors could monitor the baby's development. Since everything was fine, Bianca was expected to be discharged soon, maybe even the next day. Marta and Arnaldo, Bianca's father, had to leave the hospital to handle some practical matters. Alone in the room, reading an old magazine, Bianca heard a timid knock on the door. Distracted, she said to come in. To her surprise, it was Jorge, the handsome architect from Vitor's construction company. They barely knew each other, and Bianca couldn't understand why he was there to visit her. An awkward silence filled the room for about a minute, until Jorge, a bit embarrassed, asked how she was feeling. Bianca responded that she had been better, but that she and Maria, the baby, were slowly recovering and would be going home soon. When she said this, Bianca realized she didn't have a home to go back to. She didn't want to return to the apartment she shared with Vitor, but she also didn't know where she would go. She might need to spend a few days at her parents' house, which wasn't ideal but necessary. Then she realized that now wasn't the time to think about it. She needed to keep the conversation going with Jorge. Jorge seemed a bit nervous, but gradually loosened up. He told Bianca that he was very shocked by what happened and that he was there to offer help. He said that the construction company was willing to support Bianca and that she didn't need to worry about anything at the moment. Bianca, a bit relieved, thanked him. Even though she didn't fully understand why he was doing this, she felt he was sincere. The two continued talking for a while longer, and Bianca began to feel a bit more at ease. She still had many doubts and fears about the future, but the unexpected visit brought her some comfort. Jorge said he would come back to see her in the next few days and that she could count on him for whatever she needed. Bianca smiled, grateful, and said goodbye. When Jorge left, Bianca went back to thinking about her situation. She knew she had a difficult road ahead, but she was determined to move forward for herself and for Maria. She knew she could count on her parents and now, it seemed, also on Jorge. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to relax and think positively. The following days were spent preparing to leave the hospital. Marta and Arnaldo returned to help with the final details and to ensure that Bianca and Maria had everything they needed. Despite everything, Bianca was looking forward to starting this new phase of her life. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face the challenges. Finally, the day of discharge arrived. With Maria in her arms and her parents by her side, Bianca left the hospital. She felt a mix of relief and fear, but above all, she felt hope. She knew she had a long road ahead, but she was willing to fight for a better future for herself and her daughter. With the support of her family and the new friendship with Jorge, Bianca knew she could overcome any obstacle. On the clock in the room, the hands pointed exactly at 3:30 in the afternoon when Bianca, with a determined look despite the circumstances, called for Jorge. She needed to get up and walk a bit around the room, but her usual assistants were not around and wouldn't return soon. Jorge, who always showed a readiness to help, quickly approached the bed and offered his arm for support. As he helped her, Bianca caught a woody scent in the air, a perfume she recognized well. It was the same perfume that had permeated the room on the day Jorge had rescued her. Curious, Bianca smiled at Jorge and asked about that crucial moment. With a shy smile, Jorge confirmed that he had been the one to find her on that fateful day. He told her that he had returned to the building to retrieve important documents he had forgotten when he heard desperate screams coming from the sauna. Without hesitation, he ran toward the screams and found Bianca and another person trapped inside the overheated sauna. Jorge acted swiftly and decisively, rescuing Bianca from the dangerous situation and taking her immediately to the hospital. Since that distressing day, Jorge made it a point to visit Bianca daily in the hospital, eager to ensure that her recovery was going well. On that particular afternoon, he decided to enter the room to see Bianca in person. Their eyes met, and a smile of gratitude spread across Bianca's face, unable to find words to adequately express how much she appreciated what Jorge had done for her. Then, in a moment of mutual trust, Jorge decided to share something that had been troubling him. Gently leading Bianca to the sofa, he began to explain a serious issue at the company. The shocking news of a multi-million-dollar embezzlement at the construction firm echoed through the room. According to Jorge, it appeared that Roberta, taking advantage of her closeness to Vitor, had diverted a fortune to her personal account. The final blow came when they fled to Switzerland, where Roberta completed her plan, leaving Vitor financially ruined. Bianca listened attentively, surprised and shaken by the revelations. She had always known that Vitor's family had thrived in the construction business, but she had never imagined that such treacherous things could happen behind the scenes. Thus, between moments of gratitude and painful revelations, the connection between Bianca and Jorge grew stronger, uniting them in a journey marked by rescue and mutual trust. Since the moment Roberta executed her scheme, everything changed. Bianca remained silent as Jorge explained Vitor's personal tragedy. To her, it was like hearing about strangers. Jorge did not understand her silence. Did Bianca grasp what he was saying? He asked her directly. Bianca responded that she did, expressing only sympathy for Jorge's job situation. He looked at her with a smile and said she needn't worry. He had saved money for a long time to open his own architectural office. He already had enough resources and an investor ready to help him after completing a luxurious project. He planned to leave his job soon, so Bianca didn't need to worry about his finances. Bianca was relieved to hear that. She did not feel sorry for her ex-husband, Vitor, who had brought his problems upon himself by involving himself with another woman, especially someone she considered her best friend. Any problems he faced now seemed insignificant compared to what he deserved. It was comforting to know that Vitor's problematic family would face financial difficulties because of their own actions. Jorge told Bianca that he needed to leave, but asked if he could visit her more often to ensure she was doing well. She smiled and agreed, saying that he could visit her whenever he wanted. The next day, she would go to her parents' house, and he could meet her there for an afternoon coffee. She was curious to learn more about his office. As Jorge headed for the door of the room, Marta and Arnaldo, Bianca's parents, entered. They could not help but notice Jorge's interest in their daughter, more than just as a friend. After Jorge left, Bianca told her parents about how he had saved her. Marta mentioned that the nurses had said he came every day to check on Bianca and the baby, but she had never met him personally. She was pleased to know that in addition to being a hero, he was also a handsome man. Bianca laughed as she told her parents about the punishment Vitor had received. The next day, after leaving the hospital, Vitor returned to his parents' cozy home, where every corner and piece of furniture evoked memories of a safe and tranquil childhood. A week dragged on until news finally arrived about Vitor and Roberta. While Roberta was still on the run, Vitor had returned to Porto Alegre to face the consequences of the terrible incident involving Bianca. She, in turn, was already showing visible signs of physical recovery, although the emotional scars were still fresh. Bianca was determined to hear Vitor's testimony, but did not want to confront him directly. She accepted his words that he only intended to scare her by locking her in the sauna without harming her. However, what Vitor didn't know was that Roberta had manipulated the situation, gradually increasing the temperature without anyone noticing. This revelation only heightened the sense of betrayal and danger surrounding the entire incident. Over time, Vitor began to realize that Roberta was completely obsessed with Bianca. Her greed was not limited to money. She wanted to destroy everything Bianca represented. It was a harsh lesson for Vitor to understand that he had been used as a pawn in a meticulously planned revenge game by Roberta. When it finally sank in, he faced the painful reality that he had lost not only Bianca's trust but also any chance of reconciliation. Bianca, in turn, was devastated to discover the sordid details of how Vitor had possibly deceived her repeatedly. The revelation that he might have swapped her birth control pills to manipulate a pregnancy left her stunned. It was during an unwanted visit from Sonia to Bianca's parents' house that this truth came to light, in a moment filled with anger and disappointment. Despite all the pain, one certainty solidified for Bianca: the unconditional love she already felt for the child she carried. This love surpassed any hurt she felt towards Vitor. Determined to protect her daughter and offer her a secure future, Bianca was ready to face whatever came her way. Months passed until Maria was finally born, bringing with her a mix of intense emotions for Bianca. The birth of her daughter was a moment of renewal and hope, but also of firmness in her decisions. She decided. There was a time when Bianca's life was turned completely upside down. After a severe accident that left her paralyzed, she faced moments of profound difficulty. Gradually, though, she found comfort in the comforting arms of her parents and the true friends who never abandoned her. At first, it was hard for Bianca to accept this help. She felt vulnerable and reluctant to open her heart, but soon realized that sharing her emotions with those who loved her was a relief, like a warm embrace in the midst of a storm. Despite the adversities, Bianca managed to find a way to spend more time with her daughter, Maria, who was her greatest source of joy. The girl, even at such a young age, was the light that brightened her dark days. Vitor, Maria's father, despite his imperfections, proved to be a caring and dedicated father. He was learning, day by day, to be more responsible and a better person, driven by the unconditional love he felt for his little girl. Unfortunately, Vitor's job at the construction company where he worked ended abruptly after a devastating blow caused by Roberta, a jealous former friend. The company went bankrupt, leaving Vitor unemployed and worried about the family's future. With the tireless help of his parents, he secured a new job as a civil engineer, but the challenge of adjusting to a new work environment and answering to a new boss brought new concerns and responsibilities. During the early months of Maria's life, Jorge became a close friend of Bianca, visiting them almost daily. Their relationship grew naturally until they decided to take a step further and start dating. Jorge had always been a motivator, encouraging Bianca to resume her studies. Even with the task of caring for Maria, Bianca found the strength to graduate in journalism, achieving a dream that seemed distant during the most difficult days. With Jorge's constant support, Bianca and he decided to marry 3 years later. Together, they gave Maria a little brother, solidifying a family that overflowed with happiness and love. Meanwhile, Roberta continued to wreak havoc in others' lives. After fleeing for a while, she was finally arrested while trying to return to Brazil, facing serious charges of fraud, theft, and attempted harm to Bianca and Maria. During the trial, Roberta was sentenced to years in prison, which brought a sense of justice but also left Bianca with a deep sadness as she confronted her former friend in prison. Roberta confessed her dark motivations, admitting that she had always envied Bianca for having everything she desired, especially wealth and stability. This envy consumed her to the point of meticulously planning the harm she caused. Despite the hurts and the turbulent past, Bianca found peace and joy with Jorge and their children. Her journey of overcoming and forgiveness inspired many, touching hearts with her resilience and ability to find happiness even in the face of adversity. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to not miss other exciting narratives like this one on Universo y Palabras. Leave your like and share with friends who appreciate stories of twists and triumphs. The next story will surely touch you too. See you then.